the British government was among the strongest in pushing for this gathering. So what was the reaction there today?
Well, the British government feels it got quite a bit, at least as much as was gettable, Jeff, given the fact that they were meeting at a time of transition between the two American presidents. First of all, they were very pleased to get #1 agenda item for Gordon Brown, which was this commitment for all the economies to stimulate domestic growth at home. And secondly, on the other big agenda item, which had to do with financial regulation, they at least feel they got a commitment to address that down the road on some very specific issues like better international regulation and supervision of hedge funds or executive compensation or really big global financial institutions like Citibank. So Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister, came to Parliament today, right behind me, to tout all this as a big achievement and a testament to his leadership. And he also wrapped himself in the language of the communique about stimulus measures, essentially as political cover for what he's planning to unveil next week, which are some big tax cuts and spending hikes.
Well, tell us a little bit about that, a little more about that. In terms of a stimulus program that might be put out there in Britain, what is Prime Minister Brown intending to do?
Well, the details actually are still being worked out, but what's being talked about, it will be unveiled next Monday, is, first of all, accelerated public spending on projects underway or planned having to do with infrastructure, hospitals, other projects like that. The second, though, for an immediate boost is a significant tax cut. Some people are talking about $15 billion, which in this economy is significant, that will go before Christmas to the people most likely to spend it, and that is the lowest cohort of income earners. Now, that's a little problematic. Some of these people are some of the people who already are deep in debt, probably should use it to pay down their debt, but Brown very much wants to stimulate spending and help retail businesses. That, of course, was very contentious in Parliament today with the Conservatives attacking it, saying, look, it's all going to be done on borrowed government money. If you give this tax cut now, there'll be a tax hike down the future.
Now, you mentioned the question of new financial regulation. Are they having the same debate there as we are here, I guess?
Yes, they are, and it's interesting. It's not only a debate within the UK, it's also a debate within Europe, and this is one reason why the issue was, the can was kicked down the road a bit. And that is that the French and the Germans, who don't even totally agree, but I won't get into that, are really for much tighter regulation of some of these global financial institutions and the way they do business. Britain is a little more like the U.S. I mean, the U.S., Wall Street, and the City of London here in London, that is their version of Wall Street, have prospered and become global financial centers in part because regulation is fairly lax. And so there's a kind of delicacy with which they are approaching that issue.
And yet, as we said, Gordon Brown has been one of the leaders pushing for some kind of coordinated effort.
Oh, yes, very much on all fronts. I mean, the coordinated interest rate cuts, which have already taken place, and it's widely expected the Bank of England will do yet another one in December. He originally had hoped for, I'm told, more coordination on the economic stimulus plans. But really, someone in his office said to me today, they came to realize that wasn't practical. I mean, every economy, every government has to decide in their own budget process when they can announce a further tax cut or spending hikes. But they do, in terms of the financial regulation of global institutions, big institutions like Citibank, definitely that requires global cooperation.
Now, speaking of Citibank and various cuts here, I understand there was a new report issued today about the severity of the downturn in Britain. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. Today, the front page of the Financial Times had two big headlines. One was about the G20, about pledging to boost growth, but the other one was about a new forecast from the so-called CBI, which is not a government group, but actually the Confederation of British Industries, which, unlike in September when they forecast anemic growth through 2009, I think it was 0.3%, they now forecast a very sharp and deep recession through next year. Those big graphs inside showing negative GDP growth through all 4 quarters of 2009, a little anemic uptick in 2010, big job losses going from 1.8 million people to close to 3 million. And there was another report talking about the number of jobs that were going to be lost in London alone. But you know, Jeff, you don't even have to listen to a forecast. walking around the streets, going into businesses. I mean, yesterday we were in one sort of high-end cafe that has a designer clothing store in the lower level, and the woman running that told me their sales were down to only 1/4 of what they had been in the month of October the year before. She also told me that at her hair salon, the bankers' wives who used to come in and have, blow dries every single day, now just come in once a month for a haircut. And we went to a very modest Italian restaurant in another area of Notting Hill, and where the owner, it looked busy to us, but he said, our business is really down, and he said, and January is going to be much worse. And that was a refrain we heard from a lot of people, that as bad as it is now, they expect it to get a lot worse after Christmas.
All right, well, Margaret, that whets our appetite for more of your reporting in the coming days. We'll look forward to all that. Margaret Warner in London, thanks very much.
Thanks, Jeff.
Now, Iraq and the United States sign a new security agreement months in the making. If the Iraqi parliament approves it, U.S. forces will leave Iraqi cities next year and will be largely out of the country by the end of 2011.